Your breathing might be the reason you can't find your core. If you breathe and pull your belly up and in during inhale, if you have chronic shoulder tightness because you breathe into your chest, if you're always breathing in and out through your mouth, or if you learned to breathe into your belly, all of these will disrupt your core because all four bypass the diaphragm. In this episode, I'll connect the dots between your breathing and your core. This is information most people do not teach, and you'll experience core equilibrium. Most people never connect their breathing and their core. They seem like two separate systems, but they're not. True core is based on your breathing, driven by your diaphragm, and requires the rib cage and pelvis to be stacked. And that's not a metaphor. That is the mechanism. Your diaphragm is the engine of your breathing and also intra-abdominal pressure. When the diaphragm is not moving fully and freely, there's a lack of pressure and a lack of stability at the very center of your body. Without deep internal stability, there's only effort and the engagement of superficial muscles. And if you're always using superficial muscles in order to do core, you end up in one of those compensating patterns that creates pain. Like your low back is always achy. You only feel core work in your hip flexors, or there's stress and strain in your shoulders, neck, and jaw. There are 4 breathing patterns that get in the way of breathing for true core. And these breathing patterns not only disrupt your core, but they dysregulate your nervous system. They lead to things like indigestion, constipation, and GERD. So there are benefits that will ripple through your body when you learn to breathe for core. Here are the 4 dysfunctional breathing patterns. Number 1 is pulling the belly up and in during inhale and then bearing down or bracing during the exhale. This is called an inverted breathing pattern. Many of us were taught to do this for better posture or years of being cued to pull your navel to your spine. Even yoga cues like inhale, lift up can reinforce or create this inverted breathing pattern. And there is a little bit of engagement. It does flatten your stomach. For a moment, you feel like you have better posture. But when you do this over and over again, the diaphragm gets stuck, lifted up, or locked down. Because the diaphragm is stuck, you feel like you can't get a full deep breath. There's no rhythm of respiratory diaphragm to stimulate the rhythm of the pelvic floor diaphragm. And then there's no intra-abdominal pressure, no true core. Pattern number 2 is short, shallow chest breathing. Short, shallow chest breathing is kind of like panting like a dog. And I say that so you never want to do it again, because this short, shallow chest breathing puts you in a vicious cycle of nervous system dysregulation. When the breath stays high in the chest, you tend to shrug your shoulders as you breathe. The shoulders, neck, and traps start to do the work of breathing instead of the respiratory diaphragm. The movement of your diaphragm balances the branches of your nervous system. But when you're bypassing the diaphragm and using your shoulders, your neck, and your traps, and your breathing is staying in your chest, it's literally sending signals to your own body that you're in danger. It stimulates the fight or flight, that chronic sympathetic activation, and you can't get out of it because you're the one doing it. And the more you do that breathing, the more you reinforce that state, and then that state contributes to that breathing pattern. So you end up in this vicious cycle that leads to high levels of anxiety, hyperventilation, or feeling like you're going to have a panic attack. Not to mention, because you're not using the diaphragm, there's no intra-abdominal pressure, so there's no core stability, further leading to a sense of instability, insecurity at the very center of your body. And here's a little more science for you. Intra-abdominal pressure stimulates baroreceptors, which send signals of safety to the rest of your body. So this short, shallow chest breathing leads to hypervigilance, hyperactivity, stress, strain in shoulders, neck, and jaw. And it's made worse if you're doing pattern number 3, which is mouth breathing. Functional breathing asks that you breathe in and out through your nose because your nose is a filter. It slows down the rate of your breathing. It also humidifies the air you're drawing in. Mouth breathing bypasses all of those benefits from breathing in and out through your nose. It also tends to keep you in that short, shallow chest breathing where you're recruiting the shoulders, the neck, and the traps. Often during core work, we will inhale through the nose and then exhale through pursed lips like you're breathing through a straw, because as you can see, the pursed lips elongates the exhale and will give you more abdominal engagement. The fourth dysfunctional breathing pattern is common in yoga and meditation practitioners. It's breathing into the low belly. You may be attached to breathing into your belly because it has given you some benefits. It's gotten you out of that short, shallow chest breathing. It feels calming. It gets you deeper into your body, but the belly is not the diaphragm. If you're breathing into your belly, you can usually maintain it during your practice or during your meditation session, but it's difficult, awkward, maybe even feels a little weird to maintain during your daily activities because you're not meant to breathe there. Breathing into the diaphragm is much more anatomically accurate. It will balance the branches of your nervous system, draw you out of that chest breathing pattern, and generate true core with intra-abdominal pressure. While belly breathing might be a small upgrade from chest breathing, it's just as problematic in the long run because it bypasses the diaphragm, and that is the mechanism of generating intra-abdominal pressure, deep internal stability, and true core. Now, breathing can be a sensitive topic because it's personal, it's internal, and you weren't taught to breathe. You just pick it up. You absorb it from the people around you. Very similar to your gait and your posture. But there's so much opportunity when you're willing to look at your breathing for your nervous system, for your digestion, and your core. So those 4 breathing patterns take you away from true core, deep internal stability, and even balancing the branches of your nervous system. And here's the pattern that will bring you home. I call it breathing with circumference. The respiratory diaphragm is the muscle and mechanism of your breathing. It's meant to be driving your breathing. And the respiratory diaphragm is a musculotendinous sheet. It's almost like a parachute in the lower rib region of your body. And during inhale, the respiratory diaphragm is meant to widen, flatten, expand, and descend slightly. When that happens, you get a 360 expansion, an increase in the circumference of your lower rib region. That expansion's front, back, and side to side. And it's the side to side that researchers use when they're studying and measuring functional breathing. So it's not belly out, it's not chest up, it's not just a forward movement, but we want that full sense of circumference and expansion. When you have that expansion on the inhale, then during exhale, the front ribs draw in and down, the side ribs close like the gills of a fish, but the back body stays spacious. That is massively important for long-term yoga practitioners because long-term yogis tend to be very sticky in the T12 lower rib region on the back side of the body because this is where we tend to move from. It is one of those transitional points in the body where we can access flexibility, and I have not seen a single yoga asana practitioner who doesn't tend to collapse here during exhale. I like to teach this with a strap around the lower ribs. The strap becomes a feedback loop, and you'll learn where you tend to breathe naturally, where you have a difficult time breathing and expanding, what tends to contract on exhale, what does not contract on exhale. Most students find that either breathing into the back body is challenging, that was true for me, or breathing into the side ribs is challenging. That's true for many of my students with scoliosis in particular. When you're breathing into the strap, you are training and strengthening your respiratory diaphragm. And remember, it's a musculotendinous sheet. So it can be strong, it can be weak, it can be tight in certain areas. And just like you train your biceps or your quads or your hamstrings or your glutes, spend time training the muscle of your breathing. It's like turning on the engine of deep core support in your body. Now, let's talk about how this relates to core work more specifically. Once you've got the respiratory diaphragm moving freely and fully with your breathing, it will trigger the movement of the pelvic floor diaphragm. And those two horizontal sheaths moving together will generate intra-abdominal pressure. The intra-abdominal pressure is in your core, but it creates a tension mechanism that spreads throughout your body. This is how your breathing influences things like ankle stability. So when you're doing core work, you want your breathing to be the driver and the foundation of whatever you're doing. Most people do anything but that. You're bracing and gripping and grabbing and lifting. Instead, focus on your breathing. And then anything you're doing, like moving your arms and legs, is a way to test and challenge and strengthen the connection to your breathing, the pattern of respiratory diaphragm and pelvic floor diaphragm moving together, and your ability to keep rib cage and pelvis stacked. So balloons are great for understanding intra-abdominal pressure and core work. So basically when you're doing your core work, you want to stay well pressurized. There's evenness, front, back, side to side. Respiratory diaphragm, pelvic floor diaphragm are moving in tandem, in rhythm, generating intra-abdominal pressure. And then you're moving your arms and legs and more or less trying to maintain this pressurized system. So that is true core. That is an unshakable core, a core that's with you no matter what you're doing. When you're bracing, gripping, grabbing, the pressure goes in weird places. When you're pulling your navel to your spine, or bracing and bearing down, or lifting the pelvic floor up and in forever and ever, amen, you get a weird pressure system. You don't have that consistency and solidity. And that's why you get things like hernias, GERD, leaking, compensating patterns, more tension and pain in your body when you are doing core work to solve those things in the first place. If you start with your breathing, if you drive your breathing from your diaphragm, if you keep rib cage and pelvis stacked, you get this amazing pressurized system that will give you core you've never done before. I am living proof that this works. Before learning how to breathe for core, my SI joint was always going out. I had tons of stomach pain, stomach problems. My psoas was always tight. I felt locked up and restricted, and at the same time fragile and unstable. I never in a million years thought breathing would be the answer, but it has been. But it's also taken some alignment and some awareness of these internal mechanisms. So do this with me. If you have a strap, place it around your lower ribs now. If not, use your hands, and we're going to do a little bit of breathing with circumference. Take an inhale through your nose. Feel the front ribs expand. Exhale through pursed lips like you're breathing through a straw. Feel the front ribs draw in and down. And then slide your hands around to your back body. Again, inhale through your nose. Exhale through pursed lips like you're breathing through a straw. One more here. Inhale, fill up the back ribs. It's like you feel the skin expanding against your hands or the strap or your forearms. And then exhale, keep that fullness even as the front ribs draw in and down and you get that natural contraction. One more, slide your hands to the side ribs and inhale. Focus on breathing out and the side ribs expand like the gills of a fish. And then exhale. Side ribs draw in and drop down. And then close your eyes. One full round of breathing with circumference. Inhale through your nose. Expand front, back, side to side. And then exhale through pursed lips like you're breathing through a straw. And notice if just 5 rounds of breathing made a difference in your body, in your nervous system, even your mental clarity. I like to use the term breathing with circumference because it's more visual. It allows you to get that felt sense rather than something very clinical and dry like functional breathing. And this is the breathing that will generate intra-abdominal pressure, get you to true core, and then all the movements of arms, legs, whatever you're doing is an invitation and a challenge to maintain your breathing and your alignment, especially the rib cage and pelvis stacked, so you get that rhythm of respiratory diaphragm and pelvic floor, because that is what generates true core. Now that you felt your diaphragm working, now that you understand this mechanism of breathing for core, you're going to know when you have it and when you lose it. Use the complementary practices to make this pattern of breathing something you can maintain during your daily activity. If you find yourself bracing when you pick something up, holding your breath when you do something hard, breathing through your mouth when you're exercising, watch the next episode on maintaining your core during movement. When you're ready for more practices, download the Austin is Strong Starter Kit. And if you have trouble finding this in your own body, schedule a strength audit. We'll jump on a call and I'll help you. Links are in the description. See you soon.